now you can hear me. We're going to really dive deep into what has occurred to these victims. And this is a sad, sad story all around. All around. There's never a point where this is not a sad story, right? No matter what, okay? Anytime a life is taken way too soon, there's never a happy ending to that, ever. And so we're going to dive into that. We're going to explore what has occurred, and we're going to dive deep in true crime in this heinous episode. And so we're going to start. We're just going to what has occurred, dive into it. Okay? And so if you're on Facebook, if you're on YouTube, thank you for being a part of this. Good morning. I hope you're having your morning cafe, tea, water, whatever. So I am going to dive into this. Obviously, I keep losing a little of my words. My mind is all over, right, to make sure that I do this right. But truth is, at the end of the day, I'm going to make mistakes. I already know it. I'm not even going to try to be perfect, right? And so we're talking about Khalil Wheeler-Weaver, who was just handed down the sentence to basically spend the rest of his life in prison. Now, we start with the fact that this guy, now 25 years old, he's only 25 years old, so basically his life is gone. You know, what I never understand about cases like this, why do people think they'll actually get away with it? Why do people... I don't understand that. Like, do you not follow news? People get caught for these stupid things all the time. Why do you believe you're going to be different? And oh my gosh, you're going to hear about the woman who got away and how you can tell she knew this guy is young and he's dumb. He's not ready to understand people. And we're going to dive into that, exactly what has occurred. And so, you know, and as I said, there's never a happy ending to this type of stuff, right? My goal is to educate you on who the victims were, what actually happened to them, and how the crime turned out. What has occurred. And as you know, if you've been following my channel, I've been covering the Gabby Petito story for a minute. They still haven't found Brian Laundrie. And so I'm not going to keep updating it every single day until there's actually real developments. Because a lot of people are doing anything they can for views. They're creating stories. Like, oh, someone said this, let me go and create a story around it. That's just not me. One guy who's got so many views created a fabricated video. He took a video off of someone else and said, is this Brian, basically? And created an account around that. And so he ran with it. It helped his channel. But of course, the internet sleuths are always on top of these type of things. So I never understand why people do stupid things, period. But this is the story of Khalil Wheeler-Weaver. 25 years old, sentenced to 160 years in prison. And we're going to really dive into this surviving victim, Tiffany Taylor. My heart goes out to her, what she experienced. Her life has been completely changed because of this incident. And so she was, you know, she woke up. She just woke up. She felt his weight on her in the back seat of the car. And she felt his arm tight against her head. And she didn't understand what was going on. She just woke up and just like she's in and out. She's practically unconscious. She's just in and out. She doesn't know what to think of this whole situation, right? She's 1 minute she is in the vehicle, and the next minute she is gone. She's almost gone. And she's like, what is going on here to me? And so that's exactly why she is such a hero in this story. At least in my eyes, she's a hero. Because she had the willingness to stay alive. She had her wits about her to think ahead. And she knew, I'm not going to give up. And she saw whatever little opportunity she had, because she felt her wrist in handcuffs behind her back. And she had duct tape stretched around her head, covering her nose and mouth. She was, and I should have said this before we even started, before I get too deep into this. I want to share, this may trigger something in you if you've been through something like this. So I'm going to let you know in advance, this is a trigger warning, because it's going to get deep as to what they went through. And if you were a victim of any type of violence, I want to put this out there. This may trigger something. And so I want to let you know in advance, please be aware, this may trigger. And so she has this duct tape all around her head, covering her nose, covering her mouth. She was being raped in the back seat. And he says to her, don't worry, because he has done this before. And in his mind, when he's finished, he's going to carry her body to the trunk of the car. She cried, she bit her tongue, and there was blood on it. You know, between the mix of the blood and the tears, it kind of loosened the tape around her mouth. And she's screaming, please don't kill me. Don't kill me. I'm pregnant. That's right. She was pregnant. I think she was like 2 months pregnant. And the quote from her was, I wasn't planning on dying that day. And this is the summer. This is the summer and the fall of 2016, where between, like in a 90-day span, this serial killer is literally looking for victims. And he attacked 4 women in 84 days. He killed 3 of them. Tiffany survived. And he was using his phone for everything. To hunt women, to learn faster ways to kill. I mean, this guy, he was trying to think of all the right ways to get this done and not get caught. And when a murder was complete, he would ask his phone for directions home. And even after some of the most violent crimes, you know, all these people are just hoping the police and prosecutors someday may bring justice for these victims, right? And so, you know, truth is, for the women's affected by this, hope wasn't enough. And for Tiffany Taylor, waiting wasn't an option. And so it's amazing because women didn't crack this case. No. Actually, sad to say, it was actually friends of one of the victims that solved this case. And so I don't understand why a lot more wasn't done, but we dive into it. We dive into it to see what could have occurred. And so Tiffany is the lone survivor of the 4. Okay? She was the lone survivor. And so we're going to dive into the 3 victims. And he basically used the social media app Tagged to connect with these victims. And he used his name, profile name being Little Yacht Rock. And he used different social media profiles. He used tagged the social media app for a lot of these connections. And so the 3 victims that he did actually murder, Robin West was the first one, where she died on September 1st of 2016. Then Joanne Brown, 33 years old, she died on October 22nd of 2016. And then Sarah Butler, the last one, she died on November 22nd of 2016. And the sad part about Sarah is this should have been prevented for her. Because Tiffany Taylor would have been the 3rd victim had she not gotten away. She would have been the 3rd one to die, and she did give her account to the police. And they wrote it off. They didn't believe her. And we're going to dive into that as well. And so we start with Robin West. Robin West, she met her 2 best friends in basically a school that's almost described as a jail. It's pretty sad. See, as a teenager, she lived in this place called Wardsworth Academy. And this is a treatment facility in West Philadelphia for young people that may have some behavior problems, or maybe have some mental health issues. This place had holes in the walls, and even the electrical wires were exposed. This was not a good place. This was even a place where news reports detailed how counselors regularly raped and beat their charges from this rape. Like, they beat these charges. They would go and they would beat these charges. And that's where it's like, more should have been done. And in this dangerous place, she met her friend Tracy Johnson. And, Robin, she opened up to Tracy. And Tracy was 2 years older. She was 2 years older than Robin. And, she talked about going to a sanctuary church of the Open Door in Philadelphia with her mother. Her mother and her dad, they by all accounts, they went to church. They were Christians. They did a lot around the church area. And Robin, she was a great singer. She even occasionally led the choir. And so from there, they became really good friends. They became friends. They were like family to each other. They were like sisters to each other. And Wordsworth, the academy, is also where Robin met Bernicia Patterson. When they were both only 14 years old, they grew so close they called each other sisters. They even called each other twins. They were so close. They were inseparable. And that's where it's like, you look at these stories and you're like, how come more wasn't done earlier? Right? How come more wasn't done earlier? And so in a particular case like this, Robin, people have their issues, right? People have their stuff going on. Who are we to judge, right? That's not our place to judge. At all, that's not our place to judge. And so, Robin meets her friends there. Some people who she becomes very close with. And Bernicia Patterson, they would even go down the same road together. According to Bernicia, she said, we acted alike. We were always together. Blood couldn't make us no closer. And so Robin, she lived most of her life, her childhood, with her mother, Anita, in West Philadelphia. Occasionally, she did stay with her father, Leroy West, and we'll talk about him a little bit too. And he was a Philadelphia school district police officer and assistant church pastor. And so they lived on the city's north side of Philly. And so, Leroy, he had rules for his daughter, like having an evening curfew. His daughter was not a fan of rules. It's kind of where, that's kind of what led down that road towards that academy. Who would have known that it was such a bad place, though, right? And so, according to her father, Robin was very adventurous, very strong-willed. It really didn't matter what anybody felt. If she made up her own mind to do something, she would do it. Now, Robin and her mother, they fought a lot. And that's what accounts have come about in reference to her relationship with her mother. And so, by the time when she was 18, she moved out of the house from her mother, right? She moved. I'm trying to work on stop saying right so much. I've even had commenters complain about me saying right too much. And so people who loved West, they learned to track her moods by what she posted on Facebook. If she was happy, she posted photos with her hair dyed blonde or mint green. When she felt low, she dyed it black. And she was looking forward to September 5th of 2016 because it would have been her 20th birthday. And she posted photos on Facebook of a sleeveless white dress which she bought for her 20th birthday that she planned on using. And so, and her style, they helped her win clients when she was working at a club as an exotic dancer. And so the style that she carried, people were attracted to her at this exotic dance club. And she complained, according to one of her friends, she cried about how her parents could never accept her. According to her friend, Robin liked going out, hanging out with girlfriends. Her parents were church-going people. And West and Patterson, Brianna, if I can pronounce it, Bernicia, they both were, they did everything together. And they both were sex workers. And they always paired up to keep each other safe. They even placed ads on websites. They were meeting Johns in hotels in Philadelphia. They were by each other's side, looking after one another the best they can. And so, at the end of August of 2016, as you can tell, this is close to when September 1st would roll around, Patterson suggested a trip to New Jersey. And the two stayed at this Garden State Motor Lodge in Union Township. This was about 15 miles from Manhattan. And so after a few nights, they found themselves with no money and no place to stay. So at about 11 p.m. on August 31st, both of them, they headed to Nye Avenue in Newark, New Jersey. And this was a neighborhood of burnt out homes and weedy lots framed by an abandoned train yard. So a whole abandoned train yard was basically around that. And so Robin that night wore a Nike hat, a lacy black shirt, and black shorts. Her black sandals sparkled in the orange glow of street lights. It was her first night walking the street. And because normally they made phone calls, they agreed to meet some, they were not walking the street at this time. And so they really didn't know the ropes when it came to those type of things. They didn't really know how to do that, what to do, if there's a protocol, if there's a right way, they didn't really know that right way. And one of the first cars to stop was a silver sedan. And The driver seemed nice. He was young. He was charming. And I keep struggling to pronounce the name. And so, Patterson, that's easier to remember, right? Bernicia Patterson, she said, "Which one do you want?" She asked the guy in the car, "Which one do you want?" And so the driver pointed to Robin, and she got into the car. And Patterson, being smart, because again, they're looking out for each other, right? And she's thinking, if anything happens, I know who to find, right? So what she does is she types in the driver's license number of the car that Robin got into. And so, and as they're getting ready to, as the car pulled away, Patterson tells the driver, "Be careful with my sister because I love her." Again, they were tight. They were like twins. They did everything together, including walking the streets. And so data from the driver's phone, because once they started, of course, a little later, but now we know how they were able to track him a little bit. Data from his phone captured what happened next. He drove to an abandoned house at 472 Lakeside Avenue in the city of Orange, which is where he was from, 2 miles from his home. And he spent an hour inside, and he left at 1:27 a.m. 23 minutes later, a neighbor called for help. The abandoned house was on fire. And so according to the data of his phone, the killer drove west. He traveled a few miles on Interstate 280, then he backtracked. He passed his own home in Orange before returning to the fire. So he sets the fire, leaves. Curiosity must have got him where he wanted to go back and see what's going on. And I mean, this fire was so big that 5 cities sent firefighters. And the killer watched them attack the burning house. He's watching the firefighters fight the fire. Now, I mean, what do they call those people? Sociopaths or something like that? If you know in the comment what they call them, let me know. Let me know if you know what they call people who like to watch this type of stuff after they've committed this crime. And so inside, firefighters found a body. And according to a veteran on the fire department, he said it was the most destructed body I've ever come across. I mean, he was a veteran. He was on the fire department for 17 years. And he was the city's lead arson investigator. And he said this is the most destructed body I've ever come across. And the house continued to burn. And so what does the killer do? Hey, Google. Shoot, Google heard me say that. Never mind. He asked his phone for directions. I'm guessing it was either Google or Siri, because I don't know. I don't really know any other ones that do that. And so now the following day, her friend is wondering, where's Robin? I cannot find Robin. And so she reported Robin missing. And she gave the license plate number to the Union Township Police. The plate belonged to a silver BMW. Now, this is after the first one, so I'm not too sure what happened on the ongoing investigation for that particular part. But the body inside was burned so bad, the investigators had to use dental records to identify West. So they really couldn't tell at that time when she's reported missing that it's her in this, that she was the one that was burned in this house. And so it took 2 weeks after she went missing on September 13th, 8 days after her birthday, when they would be able to identify her. So it would take 2 weeks after she went missing before they can identify her. Rest in peace, Robin. Taken way too soon. Way too soon. And that's why this is such a sad story as well. I mean, it's never ever okay we never want anyone to die. But what we do know is that we're going to die someday. We all are going to die someday. We're all going to leave this place called Earth. But when someone is tragically taken against their own will and killed way before their time, that's even worse. Because we all know we're going to be taken, but no one's expecting to be taken at 19. He definitely deserved 160 years. And, I mean, they wanted to make sure he will never see the light of day. And so that part is true. 25 years old, he's never going to see the light of day. Let's talk about Joanne. Joanne Brown, 33 years old. Another one taken way too soon. Way too soon. Now, Joanne, she was born in Augusta, Maine. She had a sister and 6 brothers. And her family called her Billy Joe. And when she was 5, the whole family moved to Newark, New Jersey. And from what I can tell, her childhood was pretty hard. And she developed bipolar disorder and schizophrenia. But she retained a lightness to her. She retained some great parts to her. And she graduated from Westside High School, and she was all about fashion and styling her hair and styling other people's hair as well. And even when her mood would suddenly turn dark, she would recover. She's always laughing and dancing with her friends. And the way her joy would come around, it would bring people close. I mean, even though she had a lot of pain, a lot of people, still loved being around her. She was a joy to be around. Her laughing and dancing, she was a joy to be around. And even one of her friends even said, her friend Amina Nobles, she said, she's my best friend. She had issues when she was young. That's what made me draw to her, because she used to come to me and talk to me about her problems. Everyone has something. I don't care who you are. You have something. Come on, look at the world we live in. Who can live without any, hard moments? Right? Who can live with these hard moments? And, so if you think about it, it's like, Joanne, we're with you. We're with you, my friend. May you rest in peace. Amina said, I always used to talk to her. I always used to ask her, will you want to ever change? But she said that's the only way how she gets her money, was doing what she did. Joanne, she used drugs. She worked as an exotic dancer for nearly a decade, first under the street name Secret and later as London. And she was also a sex worker as well. And friends did worry for her safety. Notice how her friends didn't drop her as a friend. They worried about her safety. They accepted who she was because of what she brought to their circle. You gotta appreciate who she truly was. You know, the life she chose, that's the life she chose, but look at the love she still had. And that's why that's why they worried. As a sex worker, they're gonna worry about her safety. And that's exactly why Nobles asked her, like, will you ever change? But she said, that's the way I get my money. And so Brown did look for help. She moved into a building run by Project Live. And Project Live is a non-profit group in Newark that offers housing, drug treatment, and counseling. And so she was trying to get help. And this is an environment that it relied on rules and a regular schedule to counter the chaos of the streets. So they wanted her in, they wanted all their people in at a certain time to stay away from the streets. And so her social worker, Joanna's social worker, Christine Edwards, she said she was prostituting and had a lot of male friends supporting her. It was difficult with her to get her to keep a lot of her counseling appointments. And Brown and Nobles were hanging out with friends near Popeye's restaurant on October 22nd. And Brown, 33 years old, they were all hanging out. They were all hanging out at Popeye's restaurant. And her and her friends, waiting for the Johns. And so he arrived at 1:16 p.m. This is during the day. And he chose Brown. He chose Joanne. He arrived, like I said, this was during the day. This wasn't at night in this particular case, as it was for the first victim. And usually when she left with a client, Brown would always call Nobles to report where she's at and the time they can expect her to return. And, in this dangerous profession, it's always important to call someone, let them know where you're at. Give them a timeline of what to expect. But on this particular afternoon, another friend in their group needed to make an urgent call. So Joanne's like, here's my phone, use my phone. So Brown hands the phone to her friend, and then she got into his car. And of course, you guys know who we're talking about, Khalil. And so as they drove, Brown asked to borrow his phone. And so she called Nobles like a few minutes later, letting her know what's going on. And the cell phone towers off of his phone, it recorded the phone's location to within a few meters, which is also how they were able to tie Khalil to these crimes. And in court, he's saying that the prosecutors framed him. They framed him for this. And my friends, there was irrefutable evidence he did this heinous act. There was no doubt they got the right guy. And so she asked to use his phone, and she calls Nobles at 1:30 p.m. And so the destination that the phone showed where they were going was an abandoned house at 354 Highland Avenue in Orange. Again, this is where he lives. And so being that he's from Orange, he knew the place well. Immediately before driving to this Popeye's restaurant, he had spent 21 minutes inside of this place preparing for this moment. He took Brown there. He wrapped her head in duct tape from her eyes down to her chin. He strangled her with a jacket. He left her body on the landing of the stairs. This is terrible. I know. That's why I said, trigger warning. This is terrible. This is the last thing you want to hear. I know. And when the whole purpose of my channel is to dig deep into what happened. And that's exactly why we're diving deep into this crime. And so that's why I have to share trigger warnings that I want to let you know this is heinous. This is heinous stuff. It's heartbreaking to even see. It's heartbreaking to hear. Joanne, I know. I'm so sorry that you went through this, Joanne. Rest in peace. And so he wrapped her head in duct tape, just as I mentioned earlier when I started the show with Tiffany. And he wrapped it from her head, from her eyes down to her chin. He strangled her with a jacket. And he left her body on the landing of the stairs. And at 3:03 p.m., he left. He left this abandoned building. 2 minutes later, he arrived home. And so that's how close he was from this abandoned building to his house. Again, how could he even think of the prosecution setting him up for this? And so 2 minutes later, he arrived home. 4 minutes after that, he searched his phone for recent outgoing calls. He called the number at the top of the list, and Nobles answered. Remember, when Joanne got in the car and needed to make a phone call, he asked to use his phone. And as soon as he calls her, because he's calling like, who's the last number that Joanne called? She asked, is this London? And of course, the killer just stays silent. He didn't say anything. And so Nobles, wondering what's going on. I haven't heard from my friend. This is the number that she called me from. She's calling back multiple times like, what's going on? She called back like 3 or 4 times and no one answered. No one answered this phone. And so, she just kept calling. And then she reported her friend missing to the Newark police. She always called Nobles every day. She always called Nobles every day. And so Nobles knew something wasn't right. Something wasn't right. 7 days later, on December 5th, a pair of construction workers, some contractors, they arrived at this address, 354 Highland Avenue. And the homeowners of this abandoned building had requested an estimate to fix this home. And so the workers were scouting the first floor, then walked upstairs, and at the landing, the man stopped. He says just like this, "Boss, I think somebody's sleeping in here." And as you know, she was not sleeping. She was dead. Rest in peace, Joanne. And this is what I mean. This is such a terrible, terrible crime. And so here we have it. This Khalil. Let's talk about Khalil a little bit. Who is Khalil? Who is Khalil Wheeler-Weaver? Who is this? Who is this character? Who is this serial killer? Now, everyone knew he was a quiet person. He's just a quiet person. He's always been quiet. And he's from Orange, New Jersey, which is a small city located just west of Newark, New Jersey. And about, it's just, in total, it's like barely over 2 miles. Barely over 2 miles. Okay? Most kids who grew up here knew each other face by face. If you didn't know the face, if you didn't know the name, you knew the face. But if you didn't know the name when you were younger, by the time you got to middle school, everyone knew each other. right? If you didn't know each other when you were before middle school, by the time you get to middle school, everyone knew each other. That's how small this orange city was. And Khalil, he had very few friends. He did not have many friends. He didn't play sports. He rarely went to any parties. He didn't have any girlfriends. He didn't date. And according to neighbors and classmates from, Orange High School class of 2014, when he graduated, he didn't date anybody. He didn't really have any friends. The very few friends he had, there was just a few. Yeah, and so one of his classmates said, I know he didn't have girlfriends at all in high school. He kept to himself. He wasn't popular, but he wasn't bullied either. Now, his friends, those who did consider him friends, they said they saw a different side to him. They said he was the funniest guy you could ever meet, according to one of his friends, Richard Isaacs. He doesn't talk too much, but when he does talk, he's hilarious. That's what someone described him as. And, someone said, others said he stuck out. He had kind of a nerdy style to him. He wore plaid shirts tucked into iron khakis and plain white Nikes. So, around that time, 2014, that he sounds like someone who cared about his looks, took care of himself, ironed his pants, probably ironed his shirt as well, wore Nikes. Everyone wears Nikes or something, right? And so, in these times, you have to wear Jordans, right? Your shirt had to match your sneakers and your hat, but that's not how Khalil was, right? And if you're going after the females, you wore Jordans, right? You wore a hat that matched your Jordans or something like that. But Khalil, he wasn't a street kid. And so you knew by the way he dressed, he came from a good home, a good family. And even though in this Orange City, New Jersey, this is more of a every 1 in 4 people that live there live under the poverty line. But Wheeler himself, Khalil Wheeler-Weaver, he grew up in a comfortable home, a split level home in a very quiet neighborhood, and the neighborhood was called Seven Oaks. His stepfather is a police detective in the neighboring town of East Orange. And his uncle retired as a detective after a career with the Newark Police Department. And so here he is having family they're in the police. So he obviously wasn't below the poverty line at this time. And by his late teens, Wheeler seemed to mature. Khalil seemed to mature. He was tall, he was good looking, and he had a charming smile, so it was easy to get comfortable with him. And so he started to DJ some parties. He bought a silver BMW, as accounts say. This was the BMW that people that these women went into. And so when he went to college at Rutgers University, his friend Isaacs was dating someone, and so Wheeler started dating her roommate. And at this time, Wheeler became a security guard. He became a security guard, thinking along the lines of following in some of his family's footsteps, right? Detective, police, so he's thinking about becoming that way, and so he becomes a security guard. He even explored he even searched. He did some phone searching around some of this stuff, like on there. But speaking on some of the stuff that he was searching for, he used his phone to search for a bunch of stuff. He literally used his phone to search for a bunch of stuff. For example, he did a search, how to make homemade poisons to kill humans. This is what came up at the trial. He did a Google search for how to make homemade poisons to kill humans. So this is about the time where he probably started thinking about that. He searched, what chemical could you put on a rag and hold to someone's face to make them go to sleep immediately? So he's already thinking along the lines of what he's going to do. He's already thinking along the lines of what he's going to do. And he even searches, if I erase all the contents and settings, will it track? Right? So all this stuff comes up, and he still tries to say the prosecutors are framing me. He says that, like, unbelievable. And he even searched police entrance exam practice tests. So you can see he's kind of leading the way to try to go into this field. So he's thinking about going into this field. He used his phone to research this stuff. He used his phone to even explore becoming a police officer, researching the required exam and training he would have to go through. And here is where my hero comes in. And wow. Again, I want to give the trigger warning. What I'm going to share with you may cause a trigger warning if you've been through anything heinous like this. So please, I want to share that in advance. I'm going to share her account of what happened. Tiffany Taylor, she's my hero. She's my hero. I want to hug her for the fight this girl had. For the no, you're not going to take me. She is my hero because she fought. And it's sad the way this went down. She came to fear Khalil Wheeler-Weaver. She came to hate him. But she never gave in to his power. And as long as she remained conscious, she believed she was in control. I love that. I friggin' love that. And she says, this is her quote. This is what she says. I think I always had the upper hand. She says, I think I felt like I always had the upper hand. And she says, let me just read the quote instead of paraphrasing. I think I always had the upper hand, actually, because he's really young. He's not experienced with people, and he's just so stupid. That was her quote. That's what she said. That's what she said about him. She knew early on, he's a dummy. He's stupid. I'm going to try to use it to my advantage. And Taylor, she grew up in Salem Lafayette Apartments, and this was a public housing projects in Jersey City. I'm very familiar with Jersey City. I'm from New York City. Jersey City is basically right through the tunnel, and you're in Jersey City. And Jersey City is a pretty rough area. Jersey City is a pretty rough area. And she moved with her mother to Orlando in Florida. And this is where she attended Valencia College. She studied psychology and music, and she danced professionally in stage shows. After 2 years in Florida, she got pregnant, left college, and moved back to New Jersey, where she worked as a sex worker. And Taylor, and this is like, I don't understand how this guy actually thought he was going to get away with all of this. Like, my gosh, you are stupid, dude. You are stupid that you actually believe You were going to get away with this. And even though she did outsmart him, this is not the outsmart I'm talking about either when I titled this serial killer Outsmarted. There's more to this. It's amazing. It's amazing how they caught him, and I love it. Every minute of it. I love it. And so Tiffany, she met Wheeler-Weaver through a friend of hers. She was 33, living in Russell with her mother, and Wheeler was 20 at this time. So this is 5 years ago. She was 20 at this time. She was too young to even buy a beer, right? When they hung out, Taylor drove her Volkswagen convertible to his house in Orange, New Jersey. And they were playing NBA 2K, and Taylor kicked his butt. She was better at it than him. She even called him a youngin', right? And he liked her tattoos and her dreadlocks, and the fact that she could drive a stick shift car, he liked that very much. He became obsessed with her. He literally became obsessed with her. And he kept asking his friend to hook them up. He kept asking to hook them up. And Tiffany kept saying, no, he's too young. And not only that, he's sleeping with her friend. She just didn't want to deal with him, right? She already can see through this. It says a lot about her. You know, sometimes people go into that trade because it's easy money and men are stupid. It is what it is. I'm a man. And I would never do that, but I know that men are stupid. And I know that for a fact. Okay? I don't know. I don't understand a lot of it. It's not my place to judge. But men are stupid. And she obviously knew better. Tiffany, you're awesome. You're seriously awesome. And so she kept saying, no, he's too young. And he's sleeping with my friend. I don't got time for that. I don't have time for that. I'm kind of talking for her in that case. But she did say, I just didn't want to deal with him. And Wheeler-Weaver kept begging to pay her for sex. Eventually she said yes, but it was a lie. It was more a way to rob him. And this is her quote. I just got tired of men just wanting sex from me all the time, looking at me like I was a sex object. So I just started taking their money. I think they deserve that. Seriously, I think they deserve that. You guys want to be stupid? Well, you got played at your own stupid game. And so Wheeler-Weaver texted Taylor his address, summoning her to the white split level in Orange. She arrived about 8 p.m. on April 10th of 2016. He paid $200 cash up front as agreed upon. When they agreed to meet, he agreed, I'll give you the $200 as soon as I see you. And so she gets there, they walk upstairs, she enters his childhood bedroom, because remind you, this is the home he grew up in. The split level home with his parents. Whew, freaky as can be. She grew up in this place. So maybe at this time he wasn't going to kill her. Maybe that was the plan, was just to have sex. Because the other ones were not murdered in this home nearby. So, and so she saw a nightstand and the tiny bed of a boy. And so she said, wait, I forgot the condoms in my car. Let me go get them. Taylor walked outside, cash in hand, drove away. She robbed them, just like she planned on it. And so after that, Taylor's life would become worse. So who's to say what would happen if she did have sex with him? And what would have happened there? I don't know if I can say that word. And so her mother was diagnosed with ovarian cancer. They couldn't pay the medical bills or the rent. They were evicted from their Roselle apartment. And as winter approached, they slept in a car. So they were homeless, living out of a car for a little while. And by November 2016, Tiffany had a new hustle. And a construction worker and drug addict, she now rented a room 32 at the Ritz Motel. And we're going to get into that as well. And, so she stayed there on Route 1 in Elizabeth. And the addict owned a burgundy Lincoln sedan. He gave Taylor the keys, and he instructed her to use the car to find dealers and buy him crack. In return, he paid her cash. And so that was her new hustle, was to basically go and for this construction worker, go find him crack, and he's going to give her some money. And so, but in the meantime, she's continuously getting these text messages from a stranger. And in her line of work, this was uncommon. This is not the normal. And the man begged for sex. And even when Tiffany changed phones, he found her new number and kept texting. When she declined, he offered more money. And finally, Taylor agreed. On this date of November 15th of 2016, he was set on getting this girl. He was set on getting her. First, he went from being very attracted to her to now I need to make her another victim, basically. And so her plan, steal his money, then get away. And so the stranger, he arrived at the Ritz at 7:51 p.m. at the hotel that she was staying with the construction worker friend. Older dude, construction. And so now, because it's cold, it's 50 degrees out there, but he came dressed for like extra cold. Like he wore black gloves, and he had a ski mask on and a hat and the hood of a black sweatshirt, and his clothes concealed handcuffs and a roll of duct tape, which is what he normally did to his victims. Now, of course, Taylor didn't recognize him, right? Because he has a ski mask on. And so, she knows people that wear a ski mask in the cold. So she didn't find his outfit to be out of the ordinary. Her focus was on that money. And he paid her $80 cash. And so Tiffany, driving the Lincoln from the Ritz, the man in the ski mask is on the passenger side, and he says, "Hey, can you pull over? I got to take a pee." And this was just a ruse to get her to pull over. And she's not too sure what happened next because she just woke up in the back seat being raped. And so she's not too sure what he bashed her over the head with. Could have been the handcuffs, could have been something else. She doesn't know if maybe he slipped a date rape into her iced tea. She doesn't know. Either way, Taylor was unconscious. And she woke up, her head, filled with so much pain, she couldn't even breathe. And he pressed her body into the back seat, her neck in a chokehold. Her mind, oh my gosh, this is the end. She thought she was going to die. She thought she was going to die. And so as she regained consciousness, he then removed his ski mask. And of course, what does he say? Do I look familiar? You don't remember me? You took my money. And so now she's screaming, don't kill me. Please don't kill me. I'm pregnant. And he says, I know. Now, her being pregnant, this is a big reason why she stopped being a sex worker. This is a big reason why she stopped being a sex worker. She's pregnant. She doesn't want to live that life. But in her mind now, he was going to kill her tonight. This was done. And so she says, now again, the duct tape is over her mouth. And she's crying. She's bawling. Right? And she asks, she says, the handcuffs are tight. Could you loosen them? And he did. He did. And this is where she starts realizing who she's dealing with here. And she says, this is her quote, once he agreed to that, in my head, I said, I got him. He's weak. She kept talking. She kept talking to him. And she's just trying to get him. And she says, and this is where she gets really smart. This is where she gets really, really smart. She keeps talking and she's like, you text me, right? You text me, remember? My phone has our entire conversation. It has your Facebook account, your address, your name. But my phone isn't here. It's back in room 32, back at the Ritz. She's being smart. She's thinking, I need to figure out a way to get out of this. And then Wheeler-Weaver says, oh no, in his, he's starting to get a little panicky, right? Oh no, we got to go back to get that phone. And so he loosened the grip he had on her neck. And he moved to the front seat. And so now he's kind of playing the victim. He's now playing the victim. Right? He's not like he's trying to get her to feel sorry for him or something. And he says, nobody wants me. Nobody likes me. Why do I have to pay for a girl to show me attention? Then he starts the car. Now, Tiffany is double jointed. She's alone in the back seat, her wrist behind her back. She folded her left thumb. Into her palm, and she pulled her hand free of the cuffs. He didn't notice this. Good thing she did, that she's able to do this and that he didn't notice. And so she made her decision. She said, if this guy drives past the Ritz Motel without stopping, she's going to take the handcuffs over his neck, over his head, and just start trying to choke him. When the chain reached his neck, she would just pull with all the strength. And, she didn't know what would happen. Maybe she'd die in a crash. Maybe, she just did not want to die at his hands. But her goal is, no matter what, if I die from trying to choke him out, I want him to die with me. And that's what she's thinking. I want him to die too then. If I die, hopefully he dies with me. Now, I'm going to show you some images here. Let's see. And this is kind of the hotel. This is him. This is kind of at the hotel. This is him going back into the car. This is at the Ritz. And so this is where she already kind of had a plan, right? He didn't know that there was some guy already in there, in the hotel. So when he pulled into the Ritz parking lot, Taylor was a bit surprised. So she abandoned the plan to kill him because now they're pulled in. So she quickly slipped her left hand back into the cuffs so that he doesn't know that she's loose. And so he parks the car, opens the back door, and he tore the duct tape off of her face. And he draped a jacket across her shoulders to hide the cuffs. And he told her what the plan was. She was to walk upstairs, he would follow a few feet behind, and she would retrieve the phone, and they would leave together. Taylor, of course, is agreeing, right? Of course, she's agreeing. She would retrieve the phone, and they would be gone. Okay, no problem. And so, put that back up there. So they're at room 32 now. This is where she's at. Her friend's inside as well. And so they're back at room 32. So, you know, Taylor's agreeing, yeah, definitely. I'll get the phone. We'll leave right away. She climbed the stairs and she arrived at this room 32. She kicked the door because, of course, she can't knock. Her hands are in the cuffs. And the addict, desperate for his drugs, opened it immediately. Like, where have you been? And it's kind of what she was planning on that would happen. She rushed in and slammed the door shut. The deadbolt locked automatically. I'm so happy about that. The deadbolt locked as soon as she did that. And so Wheeler-Weaver runs to the door. He runs to the door and he's shouting, "You lied, come outside." And Taylor opens up the green curtain a little bit in the window next to the door and raises her right hand to show that her wrist was out of the handcuffs. And so the handcuff is just dangling right there. So she shows him that, and he's like, now I'm freaking screwed. And then so he runs. He runs away. He literally runs away. And this is where you can kind of see him running back to the car, right? That picture to the right, that's him running back to the car. And so they're right there that's the actual room 32 of the hotel, the Ritz. This is the actual hotel. And so seconds later, Taylor's now trying to lay a trap. She texts Wheeler-Weaver, "You have the keys to the Lincoln," she said, "but the car's not mine. Bring back the keys and I won't call the police." She already called the police. She tried to set him up. And she was hoping that he would come back with the car keys and the police would come at the same time. Didn't quite go like that. Because, you know, Wheeler-Weaver did return and the motel security cameras recorded it. He ran back onto the property, dropped the keys on the motel steps, then ran away. And so he already knew she's sneaky. So he's already know, I better not trust her too much. So, right? Like, she already lied to him 3 times. He can't be that stupid to believe she's not going to call the police, right? We know he's stupid, but I guess he's not that stupid. And so officers from the Elizabeth Police Department arrived at the Ritz at 9:28 p.m. And Wheeler-Weaver was still there watching police from the shadows. So he knew that the police had been called. And then, of course, he asked for directions again on his phone, and he drove away. And, of course, the data can show all of that. So, and, of course, Taylor's describing the kidnapping, the rape, the attempted murder to the cops. She knew the attacker's phone number, his Facebook account, his home address. She even told the cops his full name because he told her. Khalil Wheeler-Weaver. Again, how could he possibly say that the prosecution set him up? and he believed that they would buy that story. Police actually didn't even listen. They accused her of prostitution. They threatened her with arrest. Taylor was 4 months pregnant. I stand corrected. I think I said 2 earlier. She was 4 months pregnant. And the killer's handcuffs were still dangling on her wrists. Unbelievable that after what she just experienced, she still had to go through this by the police that's supposed to protect her. And Taylor begged the cops to remove the cuffs. And guess what? For an hour, they refused. They treated her like trash. That's what she said. And so, of course, Elizabeth Police Director Earl J. Graves did not respond to calls and emails seeking comment for the story around this. And so, at the trial, police officer was asked whether he had believed Taylor's story. And he admitted, not really. He said it, not really. And so the police officer did not hide it. And the prosecutor, he says the police treat her as a suspect. They do not take her seriously. They are dismissive. They act frankly disgraceful towards her. Talk about a nightmare. 7 days after Taylor escaped, Wheeler-Weaver killed again. Unfriggin' believable. Unbelievable. And so let me play this audio for you when the police got there to interrogate her.
They didn't believe me. Elizabeth, New Jersey Police Department. They thought I was lying.
What injuries do you what injuries do you have?
Look at my face and the duct tape.
For the what?
And the duct tape, my face.
When did he duct tape you?
Huh?
In the car?
In the car.
So you let him duct tape you, or what happened? I just need to know.
He put the handcuffs on me first. He choked me out, and after he choked me with one hand.
What was it all happened?
He asked, you let him duct tape you. You let him. Unreal.
In the car?
Yeah.
Where were you parked at this time? The gas station over there?
No, it was by the gas station, no.
By the gas station? It was in his car.
It was in his car.
So he took the duct tape with him?
Had to, yeah.
And he just ran away?
Ran away. I felt horrible and scared because I knew he was still on the run and they didn't believe me. So no one was going to look for him and he was just going to look for me. Definitely now to kill me because of what I knew.
I mean, after she goes through this, then she has to deal with that? Unbelievable. Like poor girl. Like that. I mean, I get it being, I'm not a police officer at all. But at the same time, like, I know that, they probably get these calls all the time, don't really know how to act. But my gosh, the cops could have done better. Here is drone footage of the area where this occurred, where this was occurring on a consistent basis. And so here we are, and there's still no, they didn't believe her. They didn't believe her. They didn't believe her. So considering they didn't believe her, what do you think happens? Another person is murdered. Another person is killed. Sarah Butler is the third and final victim of this serial killer. And so Sarah, she was, oh my gosh, if it wasn't for her friends, who knows if these guys would have been caught. And I'll share with you. But let's talk about Sarah. She was 5 when she discovered dance. She fell in love with it. She fell in love with it. She was walking with her big sister, Basania Daly, and their mother, in Montclair, and this is a suburb about 15 miles west of Manhattan. And they stopped at the window of a dance theater to watch a class. They walked inside and signed up. Daly attended only a few classes, but Butler fell in love. She fell in love with dancing. It became her thing. And so she studied an assortment of different types of dance. She studied ballet, modern, jazz, African dance. You know, she joined, and when in high school, she joined a high school dance company. And so at the age of 15, she joined a premier traveling troupe. And in June of 2016, they competed at the Apollo Theater. And this is a Apollo night, the amateur night at the Apollo in New York, which is well known. And Butler led her team to a third place finish amongst all the other dance teams that were there. And so, you know, according to the founder director of this premier traveling, Sarah didn't have the typical dancer's body. And she says, our stuff is not always easy. It can be fast. It can be very athletic. She had to work for everything. That's how much she loved this stuff, that she worked hard for all of it. And so the whole Butler family, Sarah's mother, Laverne Butler, they emigrated from Jamaica in the early 90s, and she became a nanny in Montclair. And she married a bartender, Victor Butler. They raised 3 daughters. Money was tight. Sarah worked multiple jobs, eventually saving enough for a used car. And she's the first member of her family to enroll in college. They all worked hard. Victor was a hard worker, the dad. Laverne, her mom, was a hard worker. You know, they emigrated from Jamaica, and they did everything they can to support the family. And Sarah, she did struggle to make some friends, and she didn't get along with her roommates. She really didn't like it there. She didn't like it there, you know. And so she went to New Jersey City University, and she didn't like it there. And so, but she was in school. She had no choice. Okay, she had no choice. She was at school. She had to make it work the best she can. And Butler created a profile on Tagged, the social app. This is the social network for meeting new people. When this thing first came up, it was for like 18 and under, and that was a heaven. That was a place for people to find the wrong people, let's just say. And so they changed it later on, and now it's for 18 and over. But she created an account on this app. And this was a social media site that, you know, the users describe as a place to find companionship. And they saw a profile of a man who called himself Lil Yacht Rock. And so she was getting some texts from this guy. And she was getting texts, and she was asking, you know, she was getting texts from this Lil Yacht Rock, and he typed, "You want to make money?" And the text right after that was, "Sex for money?" And then Sarah texts back, "Wow, well, how much money?" And he writes, "How much are you looking for?" She texts $500. And so for her, $500 was a lot of money. And she texts him. Sarah asks him, and this is creepy in so many ways. Sarah asks him, "You're not a serial killer, right?" LMAO. And of course, he's going to reply no. And so he wanted to meet soon. And he said, I want to meet soon. I need to leave for work. Now, she did agree to meet him, but at the last minute, she changed her mind. She stood him up. 2 days later, she kind of did reconsider. And she texts him and says, sorry about the other day. I got really nervous. And so she wrote again, she said, I felt like an ass, but your voice and your pick don't seem like a match. And Lil Yacht Rock responded, I'm a really cool guy when you get to know me. So on November 22nd, 2016, this is the first day of Thanksgiving break from New Jersey City University. And so Laverne Butler, her mom, drives her blue Dodge minivan to Jersey City to retrieve her daughter from school. Now, that evening, Sarah asked her mom to borrow the van. She wore red hair extension in a ponytail. And she drove alone in the city. She drove alone in that night. And so she picked him up at the address he provided, which was the abandoned house at 354 Highland Avenue. And so when he picked her up, inside, that's where Joanne's body lay on the second floor there, where he had left her a month earlier. And her face was still wrapped in duct tape. And outside, Butler pulls up in her mother's blue van, and Wheeler-Weaver climbs in. And it's nighttime, 9:55 p.m. So it's definitely nighttime. And they drove to a 7-Eleven store a few blocks away. She stayed in the minivan. He got out. And he went and he purchased some condoms. And now security camera, they do show what he was wearing. They do show, and that is, let's see here, where are we at? There we go. So you can see it here. See the picture on the left, that's at the 7-Eleven, where they have camera footage of what he was dressed as to help identify him as well. And so they have record of what he looked like that day when he did what he did. And so, give me 1 second here. Why isn't that playing? Why don't you stay on? I need to figure that part out, don't I? And so now we're just trying to figure out what he's doing. Oops, sorry about that. So now we're just trying to figure out what's his plan, right? And so here we are sharing, okay, they're at 7-Eleven, and security cameras capture his outfit, the same one he wore to attack Tiffany Taylor, black shirt, hood pulled over his face, black sweatpants, black sneakers, tight-fitting black gloves. And so at 10:07 they drive away. And so the minivan, it climbs some wooded hillside on the Eagle Rock Reservation, and 400 feet from the front door, a restaurant's valet lot sit behind a scrim of trees, and a green trailer leans on bulging tires at the edge of the lot. And that is where I was sharing that with you right there, to give you an idea of what that looks like. See that right there? And so that's a little idea of what that looks like for you. And so this is where Wheeler-Weaver murdered Sarah Butler. And he dragged her body behind that trailer. And he was a little sloppy about it. He allowed her heels to carve parallel trenches in the soft ground. And he left the sweatpants tied around her throat. He did this in such a short period of time, of where he did all of this in 84 days. This guy was desperate. And he would have kept doing it without a shadow of a doubt. He would have kept doing this. And so when he removed the packing tape from her head, it ripped out red fibers from her hair extension. And so he put the tape inside the van. And so her body was covered with leaves and twigs. And her hands and feet were left exposed right there. And so this is where I say, if the police would have believed Tiffany Taylor from the onset, Butler would be alive today. Butler would be alive, and they could have done their justice a lot sooner. But instead, Butler was taken way too soon. Rest in peace, Sarah Butler. And so now friends want to find Butler. They want to know what happened to Butler. Because Butler was supposed to return home with the van at 8 p.m. that night that she borrowed the van from her mom. And when she didn't return, Basania Daly, her sister, started texting friends, asking if anyone had seen her. And in the morning, Laverne, the mom, was like, okay, let me call my daughter. She's blowing up her phone. And the calls all went to voicemail. Now she's starting to panic. Mom's like, something's not right. She was supposed to be back at 8. Now she's not picking up the phone. I can't get a hold of her. And so on November 25th, 3 days after Butler went missing, Basania Daly's friends spotted the blue minivan. And it was tucked behind a factory that used to be there 4 miles from Butler Street, 6 blocks from Wheeler-Weaver's house. So if you notice, they all live very close to each other. And so police arrived at the scene, as did Daly and the friend Lamaya Brown. Now, the police, they hadn't yet noticed Butler's red weave. They hadn't noticed that yet, but Butler's sister did. Lamaya Brown let out a scream when they saw that, because they knew it was her. Lamaya pointed to her hair extension on the ground. Whew, this is hard. This is tough. Beside it sat the same blue plastic trash can Butler's mother liked to keep beside the driver's seat. And that's where some of this you can see where this is a horrible, horrible thing. And it was proof that they needed, that Sarah was not missing. She was in danger. And so these women, they decided to take matters into their own hands. And they drove to Sarah's home and opened her laptop to try to do some digging. Now, Brown knew the password, which is her friend, so they searched Butler's email and Facebook, and Daly's friend Samantha Rivera joined them. So the three of them now are doing their own investigation. And they were looking for clues. I love it. I love it. They were looking for clues. So they logged into Butler's account untagged. They saw she had been chatting with a man called Lil Yacht Rock. And so daily, she's reading what's going on between the two. So she's reading that he's asking, you want to make money? The woman decided they had to find this user, Lil Yacht Rock. So Samantha Rivera, she creates a profile untagged, and this is why this is the serial killer, the dating app serial killer, because they're using this to catch him. And so they're using it to try to catch him. Why does that keep happening? So they don't necessarily right away get it, right? So Samantha creates this fake profile untagged using someone else's photo and a fake name. And so Little Yacht Rock was one of the first profiles that popped up. It's one of the first profiles that was first to appear. And Rivera clicked the button on his profile, giving him a thumbs up on something. And then he gets notified, of course. And so in the days after Butler went missing, Daly and her friends spent a lot of time at Montclair Police Headquarters giving statements and waiting for news. They were standing inside the station. They were there on November 26th when Rivera received a text untagged. And it was from Lil Yacht Rock, also known as Khalil Wheeler-Weaver. It's hard to remember all that. And so he texts them at that same time while they're there at the cops. Wow. Like, I love the digging that they were doing. And so he said his name was Taj. And so he began by offering cash for sex. He needed to meet soon before he left for work. Same thing he said before. Same thing he did to her. And so everything was rushed now, right? So the money, the rush, all of it mirrored the same text that went to Butler before she disappeared. So obviously they knew, I think we have it. So they were getting very suspicious of this guy. And, you know, as messages progressed to a call, Rivera pressed a button to place Lil Rock on speakerphone. And Daly, thinking on the go, thinking really quick, being really witty on this, opened the camera on her own phone and recorded the conversation on video. While they're still at the police headquarters. And they were great. Lil Yacht Rock didn't catch on at all. He wanted to meet Rivera soon. Do you want me to stop on by? He said. Now, the women, obviously, you know, they had to think fast, right? They needed more information. They needed more time. So Rivera, of course, lied. She said she was doing her hair and she had a baby at home, so she couldn't leave until her sister arrived. She initiated a three-way call with Daly, who pretended to be her sister. Wow, these girls are on it. I love it. I love it. I love it. And so she's like, you know, as she stalled, Rivera baited the hook. She wanted to meet for sex, she said, and she was desperate for money. She needs money now. Let's hook up. Okay? And so he's like, I live with my sister right now and don't want to be here. She told him, I want to be somewhere else. Now, eventually, Rivera said she would meet him at a bread co, Panera Bread. I'm in St. Louis. Here it's Bread Co. Elsewhere it's Panera Bread. And they met in Montclair, a mile from police headquarters. So after hanging up, they went to the cops inside the station and described the planned meeting. The three women stayed there. Police sent 2 detectives instead. Now, confronted at Panera, Lil Yacht Rock gave the officers his real name, Khalil Wheeler-Weaver. The police would later say they had no body, no evidence of a crime, no reason to consider him a suspect. They let him go. Wow. They let him go. Why didn't they go find Tiffany? They gave, oh my gosh. So, meanwhile, authorities started to follow the trail of Butler's iPhone, which sent its last location ping from Eagle Rock Reservation the night she disappeared. On December 1st, police found her body lying in weeds by the valet parking lot. And so, thanks to the efforts of Basania Daly and her friends, police were already homing in on her killer. 5 days after Butler's body was discovered on December 6, 2016, Wheeler-Weaver was in custody. All communications by Lil Yacht Rock and his other false name Taj and Pimp Killer Ghost stopped permanently, obviously. And so these women, they're the true heroes in my opinion as well. And so the murder trial was to begin. And so Khalil, he made a lot of mistakes in this whole process. He made a lot of mistakes. That's why I'm surprised it took this long to actually catch this heinous dude. Like, it took this long to catch him. And so here we are, you know, he's finally sentenced, but even though he made all these mistakes, it still proved to be difficult to catch. Right? Like, he searched ways to kill people with bleach. He used his phone to do that search. When he met Robin, he drove her to an abandoned house, murdered her, burned the house to the ground, and returned to watch the fire. And the phone sat right beside him, recording his location. And if you notice, out of all 3 victims that he killed, Robin was the only one that he burned. I wonder why. Maybe because it's the first one and he's thinking it's the last one, and who knows why. He was trying to obviously get rid of any evidence that can link to him. And so now when Joanne Brown borrowed Wheeler-Weaver's phone to call a friend, that phone pinged to a forest cell towers. And so this helped create a digital trail that led prosecutors to the empty house where he killed her. Now, when he attacked Tiffany Taylor near the Ritz Motel, and when he murdered Sarah Butler in Eagle Rock Reservation, his phone was there and it was on. So obviously he wasn't thinking about all this stuff when he's thinking he would get away with this. My question is, if you thought you would get away with this, why didn't you study this more? Or really, if you thought you would get away with this, how did you think you'd get away with this? I don't know. I don't know. I don't know. He didn't speak much outside of that, right? So police from 2 cities, one in Montclair, which is the home to Sarah Butler, and Union Township, where West had stayed in the motel, they interviewed Wheeler-Weaver during his spree. Both times that they interviewed him, you know, Wheeler-Weaver, he did accompany officers on driving tours. He showed police where he met Butler and West, where they drove together, and where he last saw each woman safe and alive, he said, that he dropped them off. And so, as we now know, everything he told the police was a lie. His phone records would prove that he lied. Now, until they discovered Butler's body on December 1st, police found no evidence that a crime had even occurred. So, because they were just missing. Even though they both were, you know, tied to him at the time when he's being questioned, they were just missing. They didn't know if there was a crime that had been committed. And so at that time, there was no way of knowing he was a suspect or if she was really missing. Like, you know, people run away, right? And so for them, it's just a missing person. It's a basic thing to them, you know. And so in their mind, they're thinking it's not easy to prove that he's guilty. Because think about it. Prosecution took 3 years to investigate his crimes before bringing their case. Their evidence ranged from, you know, canine searches to, you know, advanced technology, even a device created by NASA that allowed investigators to melt his smartphone and harvest his data without his password. But police didn't crack the case. Her friends cracked the case. You know, and what's great about this is that these women, they never investigated this type of stuff before. They never did things like that. And so, you know, when they discovered when Basania Daly and Lamaya Brown discovered the hair extension, this made Sarah Butler's disappearance look even more suspicious. You know, and them playing sleuth, you know, internet investigation, they established that his methodology, using his phone to track women, offering cash, then rushing to meet. By finding him online and luring him to a trap with police, they did risk their lives, but it was worth it to them. Because in his mind, he's believing that he's hunting the next victim. But in reality, guess who was the ones being hunted? Guess who was the one being hunted? That's right. Khalil Wheeler-Weaver. And so 3 weeks after she narrowly escaped, Taylor read this story about Wheeler-Weaver and his arraignment in Newark in December 13th. Now, after this, of course, Taylor is not fond of the cops at all, you know, but she had to choke down her fear. So she went to the courthouse. And she recalls, I was nervous every time I called police. I always end up wishing I didn't call. Especially after they, oh my God, poor thing. And so Taylor was the only person who could tie together all the threads of Wheeler-Weaver's murder spree. His phone, his digital stalking, his rape, the strangulation, and wrapping his victim. Her testimony at court was without a shadow of a doubt, yep, he's guilty. She was very important in this case. Very important. And, you know, they would like to think they could have done this without her, but her testimony made it 10 times easier. And so she testified for a whole day at his trial. And she described to the court how the Elizabeth police failed her and the system and Sarah Butler. She says, if the police had believed me, Sarah Butler would still be alive. Now, Taylor sat in the witness box and faced him. She told the jurors how she robbed this man, lied to him, how he strangled her, and how moments later she played him for a fool. I wanted him to see me. I wanted him to know it was me. And so on December 19th, he was found guilty of 11 felonies, including murder, attempted murder, kidnapping, and aggravated arson. Each murder count carried a sentence of life in prison. And so, you know, you look at this and you're like, number one, it's sad that anyone died in this. Number two, it sounds like one of them could have been prevented had the police done more. And to this day, none of those police officers were held accountable. None of them. They wrote her off. I don't really know what you can do, but I hope that they're not police people. My friends, thank you for joining me today. I'm Manny Rodriguez, and this is another episode of Deep True Crime, where we explore and go deep in true crime. I'm Manny Rodriguez. Thank you for joining me today, and I look forward to serving you guys again. Have a wonderful, wonderful day, and let me know in the comments what you think about this story. What is your thought process behind this story? I'm Manny Rodriguez. I look forward to serving you guys again, and if you have any requests, comment below on what you would like me to share. I'm Manny Rodriguez. I'll talk to you later. Peace.